Gina Shabby writes, Libertarianism, Morality, and Relationships. Dear Adam, I am part of the minority of women in the libertarian movement, and I have a woman question that if you cannot answer, I'm sure you can point me in the right direction to finding that answer. Well, we shall see. I understand that the philosophy behind libertarianism stems from self-ownership and how that plays into a set of political ideas that allows the most freedom. I also believe that libertarianism, in its philosophy, provides a set of moral ideas as well from which we can construct our social interactions. The reason I wonder if you may have an answer to my question is that your activism relates mostly to the former, by the way. Thank you for what you do. You're very welcome. So, this is absolutely true. And the important thing to keep in mind here in terms of like the scope of libertarianism, like I'm a lot more than a libertarian, and what we present on Adam versus the Man is a lot more than strict libertarianism, but libertarianism really does not address anything beyond self-ownership, the non-aggression principle, and interpersonal violence. So if you're not violating someone else's property or their body or their rights, essentially, then that's all libertarianism itself has to address. But there are some really cool other implications of this in terms of personal relationships. And I just want to point out, if that makes you a libertarian, then in their daily lives, almost everybody's a libertarian. I mean, how many people got up this morning and were like, gee, to make my income today, I think I'm just going to point a gun at some people and threaten to lock them in a cage and steal from them. No, most people just go about their days respecting the rights of others, not stealing, not doing violence. So in a sense, like we've already got this covered socially. People are good people. They're very libertarian, generally speaking, in their personal lives. But you can go a lot further with this in terms of applying the exciting principles of libertarianism and of capitalism, of free exchange, of self-ownership, of cooperative, mutually beneficial relationships. So my question is, how does libertarian philosophy encompass interpersonal relationships? I understand that consensual sex between adults is not considered immoral, including dramatically sarcastic, dirty, dirty gay sex, since we have the right to consent. But what about stepping out of bounds on a relationship, or being the one who is on the side, the low-life harlot? How much merit does entering a consensual and committed relationship hold in and outside of the relationship? Now, this is like getting into a lot of personal preference stuff, like how much merit does entering the relationship hold? It's really up to you. And see, this is the other cool thing about libertarianism that does have a lot more broad implications. Because if libertarianism says that when someone does something wrong or something that you don't like, your only legitimate response is to disassociate, or your really only remedy is to say, I don't want to be with this person anymore, I don't want this relationship to continue, then you can walk away and you can tell them why. Or you can continue in that relationship and tell them why you don't like it and say, well, hey, if this continues, I'm going to stop. And the only time that it's appropriate to use force is in immediate defense of life or limb, or hypothetically justified in terms of property, although I would make the case very rarely is that practically justified, or in terms of value maximized, is it justified? So the flip side of this is sort of like, okay, so if you're justified using force in this situation, then you're not yet justified using force against an individual in any other situation. And the reason that's so exciting is that this concept of disassociation or boycott becomes a universal, powerful tool that, in a sense, we already use extensively and don't really properly appreciate or understand the significance of. Because when you choose to say, buy your groceries at Ralph's, you're making the choice to not buy your groceries at Trader Joe's or at Whole Foods. And if that's the choice you're making, you're essentially disassociating from Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. I mean, they're right there. You could associate with them, and you're saying, no, I'm going to get my groceries from Ralph's instead. I wouldn't recommend that. I would go with one of the other two, especially if you care about clean organic food in general. But there's a much broader way than that this can be applied if you see it as choice of association. And the implication is that you can be assertive about who you invite into your life and how, and defining those relationships when your right to walk away is respected at any time. So, if you don't like what a company is doing because they're spoiling some environmental resources that you appreciate, or they're using child labor, you can choose to disassociate, and that's a much more effective tool than violence in the first place. So that has a lot of implications for personal relationships as well. Gina goes on, from how I see things now, I would argue that someone who has entered a social contract, such as a committed and monogamous relationship, holds a responsibility to the other partner to not cheat as part of the social contract. Now, here's where I like what you're saying as someone who appreciates monogamous relationships myself. I mean, that's so far been my preference. And there's no, but this idea of a social contract is a real problem, real big problem. Because, like, say you're dating someone and you have an understanding of what the relationship is based on the social contract. Like, your parents just always told you as a dude, well, no, a woman is expected to to cook and clean and make babies. And that's the social contract. And the social contract is a bullshit myth that individuals come up with or impose on other people. So it's really important to understand that, because if you date a woman who's like, no, I want to work and we're going to hire a maid, or if you're not working, dude, you're going to be the one cooking, cleaning, doing dishes, and if we can, we'll have you make the babies too. But, this is like, there is no social contract. It is a myth or a way of describing in binding terms what is a loose set of social expectations. It's a very important distinction. So if I were to say, hey, according to social expectations, you're the woman in this relationship, I'm going to pick you up for our first date and I'm going to pay for it. And I have that expectation for myself because of whatever gender bias my society has expressed to me. And, I go and do that, then that's fine. But if someone says, hey, social contract, dude, if you don't pick up the girl, then it's about her expectations. It's about her perception of the social expectations and what to expect of you. So, like, it's the social contract. It's funny that you mention it in the relationship context, because it's usually used in the government context to say, oh, no, you have to pay your taxes. Taxes aren't theft because according to the social contract, you have to submit to government. Bullshit. I didn't consent to that. I'm being forced into this relationship. And that's, when you see it that way, the relationship between two individuals, really should be a lot more explicit. And this is where people fuck up so bad. And I can tell you, like, from experience, because I fucked it up pretty bad myself. And you don't have to go sit down on your first date and be like, all right, so this is the first date, and if there's a second date, I'm expecting at that point that you're going to kiss me goodnight, and you're not going to see anyone else or go on any other dates. And if we sleep together after the third date, I'm going to consider it cheating on me if you look at another woman or man. Like, no, I mean, you don't have to be like that, but you shouldn't assume anything in a partner. You shouldn't assume those expectations. And like, I've been clear in relationships in the past, and the clearer that I've been, the better those relationships have worked out for me. And it's always when there's different expectations. And I mean, I can tell you this from friendships, from working relationships, when those expectations aren't clear, or like I come into an employment relationship and I hire someone and I have this expectation, hey, you're going to show up on time, and because I'm paying you, you're going to do what I say, and you're not going to talk shit about me behind my back. If I don't make those things clear, I mean, some of those are like really basic. Although in today's society, the standard of employment has gotten so low, like even then, you have to make those really explicit. I mean, some people would say, oh, I thought I could come into work anytime and being late wasn't a big deal. If you don't lay those expectations out, you're not going to get what you want. And in a way, life is kind of an ongoing journey of relating to other people and relating to the world by expressing your preferences and talking about your needs and getting what you want. And we all get better at that over time. So it's definitely a long-term kind of skill to develop. So let's see. not to cheat as part of the social contract. But the person outside of the relationship who assists in the affair has not breached a social contract since that person did not consent to the contract. But then I ask, does the contract only exist under the right to consent, or does it go deeper than that? No, there is no social contract. You get rid of that idea. It is a bad word. It is an inaccurate word to describe social expectations in a way to manipulate other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we have general expectations, but we didn't sign a contract, and then I go, oh, but we signed a contract, and you didn't sign a contract, it's like, whoa, what the hell are you talking about? So you're imposing your expectations on others just by virtue of using that construct. So, and this, someone asked me the other day, like, if someone cheats on someone in a relationship, who is more guilty? This is one of those sort of timeless relationship questions, right? Who's more guilty? The person who cheated on their partner, or the person who... I think the question is always asked to like make it to make it so that the person enticing them, seducing them, leading them away from their committed monogamous relationship, like it's their fault. And you know, in a social sense, it could be irresponsible. But see, here's the thing: what is the violation there? Is it a violation of social expectations? It doesn't matter. Is it a violation of your expectations? And I would say it depends in this case. So, like, arbitrary situation: person A cheating on person B with person C. If person C doesn't know that A and B are in a relationship, then obviously there's no fault there. Now, person A obviously knows that he's in a relationship, she, and their commitment to the other person, if it's explicit and they said, hey, we're monogamous, I'm not going to cheat on you, and then they go and cheat on them, that's just being dishonest. That's a sort of breach of verbal contract, and I would say, you know, it's not a violation of the non-aggression principle, but there you're talking about really clear deception and betrayal, and in that sense, an immoral behavior that I would strongly, condemn and say I would not want to stay in a relationship with someone that you cannot trust. And holy crap, it really boggles my mind. Although I have to say, I've been in not quite a cheating situation, but similar. So, like, I understand. And I know you're going, what the hell is that? And I'm going to tell you, I can't say for now. But maybe in a few years, that story will come out. So I understand that it's like, well, you cheated on me, but I still love you and want you back. That's really tough because you can't trust a person then. It's like, and people put up with a lot of shit in relationships. So I understand. But now, if person C here knows that person A is in a relationship and helps them cheat in that sense, then you might say that there's a culpability. But it really doesn't matter, and it comes down to a matter of individual judgment. And it's not exactly a breach of trust if that person never entered into any kind of agreement themselves. So here's what it comes down to. Would you date someone, first of all, who's cheated on someone else? I would say no. And I've been pretty fortunate, and I've never cheated on anyone. The closest I've come was, you could call it cheating. I'll say by some interpretation. I was going to break up with someone, ended up hooking up with someone else, and then breaking up with them. But I didn't go back into the relationship and try to tell them that it didn't happen. I was totally open about it, and I didn't try to deceive them about it. And I was already, in a sense, I had already absolved myself of the contractual commitment there, if you will. So, and if you think I'm a scumbag for that, hey, don't date me. I'm okay with that. And if someone was dating me and was ready to break up and the relationship was already at that point and there was someone else, I wouldn't hold it against them. So I would date someone who's done that. Would I date someone who I know just in a committed relationship just randomly cheated and was just like, oh, I don't really care about my commitment, I'm just going to go have sex with someone else? No, that is someone I would not want to date if I knew that about them. Now, if it was someone who said, if it was person C, would I date person C? Someone who had done that horrendous thing of tempting someone out of a relationship and encouraging that immoral behavior? Maybe. Depends if she's really hot or not. Yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to. Personal preference. All right, what kind of rights? All right. So here we go. Back to the email. If entering a social contract consists of giving part of your self-ownership to another person, I can see how it would be argued that having relations with a person in an interpersonal relationship would be a violation of the other partner's property rights. No, it's not. When what I mean is, it's entering a social contract is not giving your self-ownership to another person. If I have an employment contract with someone, that's a commitment to do something conditionally, not to allow you to claim ownership over me. That's a different concept. So you can have in a contract, like, I give up a part of my self-ownership. You can have elements of that, but that is not necessary in a relationship. I mean, a relationship is a commitment to someone else. You could call it contractual if you have a marriage agreement, a prenup, or just a marriage, not a license from the government, but maybe you make a vow at a wedding. That's a verbal contract, but that's all it is. And if that were so, both the cheating partner and the person on the side would be guilty of violating the property rights of the cheated. No. See, then you can't as in a relationship. And this is really important. And I think if you're seeing it this way, Gina, you might be setting yourself up for some bad relationships, because you don't own a partner. You don't own a child. You don't own a romantic partner. You don't own your parents. You can't put it in that category. On top of that, that would mean that a divorce would be considered stealing the part of oneself that was given to another person. This idea, how I see it, directly goes against one of the biggest branches of the libertarian philosophy, self-ownership. Do we really give up part of our natural rights in order to form healthy relationships with other people? Not necessarily, but a lot of people do in very unhealthy, emotionally codependent ways. What kind of rights, according to libertarian philosophy, does one have to not be cheated on in a consensual and monogamous relationship? Wow. It's not about rights. It's about just respect for the relationship, the contract, the agreement. And it might be spoken, it might be unspoken, but there are a lot of dangers with unspoken contracts unless you have the kind of intimacy to be confident in them. While I understand that there is a social contract agreed upon by two parties, no, there is not. What exactly is being taken away from, or what right does it impede if a counterpart of the party breaches the contract? You know what, Gina, I love that you're thinking about it this way. I mean, this is really exciting. It raises a lot of important questions and a lot of points, but it also raises a lot of problems that I think a lot of libertarians typically fall into when they hear about the philosophy in the first place. And sometimes it's, I should ostracize and boycott people who don't know, who don't do what I like. And then sometimes you see, like, oh God, free state projects. Oh man, a lot of libertarian activists go, oh well, this person once sneezed at me and didn't cover their mouth. Ostracize them. I will never associate with them again. And you're just like, really? I mean, you got to get some freaking perspective in the first place. But it seems like you're doing the same thing here of trying to transpose libertarian theory and contract stuff and self-ownership philosophy into personal relationships in a way that misunderstands what is really a relatively simple concept and dynamic of, how to relate to another person with these values and, in a responsible way. So if responsibility is assumed on people to not engage with people in relationships, it could be argued that there is a lack of consent coming from the parties outside the social contract. For example, if a man who is married breaks a social contract to his wife by involving himself with another woman who is aware of his contract, both he and the other woman are guilty of breaking the same contract. No, you cannot break a contract to which you are not bound, unless you're talking about the social contract and imposing it on everybody else, which is a terrible, terrible idea. Of course, you could say maybe the social contract is just a framework. It's just a metaphor. And if saying that you violate, but again, it's a very bad, inaccurate one. So if you say the social contract is really just those expectations, if you fail to meet expectations, the consequence is that people aren't going to want to hang out with you anymore. Big surprise. The difference between the two of them, though, is that the man entered the contract consensually while the woman had no say in the contract but was still expected to respect it. Now, it's true. Like, this is sort of a general expectation. But again, it's kind of contingent on the contract, and it becomes very subjective. So if I have a contract with someone else, it would be considered immoral for a third party to forcibly interfere with that contract and violate our rights to conduct business between ourselves as individuals. But it's not a violation for them to just come and talk to us. And what if the agreement is, I'm hiring you to kill somebody, like I'm a politician and I'm hiring a soldier to go to the other side of the world and kill strangers, and we have a contract. Although I should point out, when you're in the military, it's not a contract. They call it the enlistment document for a reason, because no one from the government signs it, and it doesn't even pretend to bind the government to anything. In the fine print it says, the terms of this document can be changed, revoked, or altered at any time without notifying any of the parties assigned to this. Yeah, joining the military is pretty sick. So if someone wanted to interfere with that, they could. So violating someone else's contract in that sense, or encouraging them to violate their contract, doesn't cross the same absolute threshold, but it could still be something that is bad that you don't want to support, and therefore you disassociate from the person doing it. As you can see, I haven't really reached through the thorough conclusions on the ideas behind the connection between self-ownership and relationships, and searching for articles on Google about the social morality behind libertarian philosophy has really only reiterated my views on the lack of morality behind government interactions and how interactions within capitalism should work. Well, if you're looking for social morality behind libertarian philosophy, that might be because you might be coming up short, because that's not really what you're looking for. And I think what you're looking for more is free market response to bad actors and theories of ostracism and boycott, and how those apply not just in moral situations, but in situations of personal choice preference, and how personal choice preference has various economic implications, not just for individual one-on-one relationships, but for the market and government at large. I really hope to hear from you regarding my questions, and thanks for taking the time to read through this. Gina, you're very welcome. But I should say, this is not a woman question. This is really a universal question. And if anything, I think the men in the movement would be pretty wise to consider these issues. And maybe if they did, there would not be so few women.
Nobody else is showing the IDs.
Yeah, you got to show ID.
Sir, you're grabbing me?
And that's the problem. The decision-making matrix. Exercise your right to alter or abolish the government.